Hello, today's video will be covering the quantity theory of money, including the Fisher effect and an example to tie it all together. First, let's begin with the quantity theory of money, which was created by Irving Fisher. This theory revolves around the idea that the velocity of money, which is the number of times a dollar is used to buy a good or service, does not change a significant amount in the long run due to the factors of payment. This realization allowed Fisher to observe the relationship between money supply, price levels, and real GDP. As you can see here, the money supply multiplied by the velocity of money is equal to the price level multiplied by the real GDP represented as Y. If you instead look at this equation via growth rates, you can remove the non-changing velocity and replace the change in price level with inflation. Now we can see that inflation can be observed by the change in money supply relative to the change in real GDP. If the real GDP is growing too slowly and money supply surpasses it, inflation occurs. If money supply does not grow as fast as real GDP, deflation instead occurs. Now let's move on to the Fisher effect, which uses interest rates and the expected inflation rate found from the previous equation. Because the inflation rate can only be what is expected, the real interest rate is also only an expected amount. Using nominal interest rate and adding inflation, you are able to find the expected real interest rate. Something to note is that if the expected interest rate is not as much as the actual interest rate that results, borrowers end up winning and have to pay less back to their lenders. Now, putting both of these ideas together, we can see how in the long run, as seen by the quantity theory of money, as the money supply increases faster than real GDP, inflation will increase. Then, as seen by the Fisher effect, as the expected inflation increases, the nominal interest rate will then also increase. To tie this all together, let's work through a little example. Say the money growth in Canada is 4% a year with an expected change in velocity of 2% a year and a real output growth rate and interest rate of 3%. What will the nominal interest rate be? First, we can use the quantity theory of money and growth rates to find the expected inflation rate. Knowing the money growth rate, M, is 4%, the velocity V is 2%, and the real output growth rate, Y, is 3%, we can find the expected inflation of 3%. Now, we can take this expected inflation and use the Fisher effect equation to find the nominal interest rate. Considering the real interest rate is also 3%, adding the expected inflation rate of 3% gives a nominal interest rate of 6%. As you can see, the nominal interest rate is much higher than the real interest rate, which means unlike the scenario I mentioned before, where borrowers were better off, in this situation, the lenders are better off, and borrowers are paying back more than they may realize. Thank you for joining me and hope you enjoyed my talk on the quantity theory of money and the Fisher effect.